All right. Hello, class, and welcome to our very first e-lesson, at least in this sort of video format. This is exciting. I know we all much rather be in the classroom together right now, but I don't know. I think it's cool to engage in teaching and learning with you in a new way. It's all about perspective, right? Um, we're all in this boat together, trying to figure this out. Um, you know, so there might be some bumps along the way, but we'll get there. Um, like I've said before, if you have any questions or concerns at all, please don't hesitate to email me. Um, then, if we need to, we can hop on a Google Hangout if necessary. Um, and I'm always available. I'm responding to emails throughout the whole day, right? So please reach out. So before we get started with this lesson, just a little tip as you watch this video and other videos in the future. You should be taking notes as you normally would, like we were in class. As I go through the lesson, I will highlight important material that you should write down, um, like I normally would. Um, but I will not be posting the slides themselves since, here it is for you. It is your responsibility to take the notes from the lesson. Like I said, I will be highlighting what is most important, but it's up to you to write down as much as you feel is necessary. This is the skill of note taking. If at any moment you need to press pause, you have the luxury to do so. And then you can catch up in your notes and then resume the video. Sound good? So let's begin. We just finished the story of Exodus and you took the test yesterday. So now we are beginning the story of Joshua. So if you want to start a whole new page of notes or a new section, you can. This is the beginning of a new unit called Joshua. Before we begin, I want to play just a brief clip of a video for you that kind of explains the transition from Exodus and Moses to Joshua.
The book of Joshua. Let's back up and remember the story so far. So God chose Abraham, and then his family became the people of Israel, who are then enslaved down in Egypt. And so through Moses, God rescued Israel out of Egypt. He made a covenant with them at Mount Sinai, and he brought them through the wilderness. So Israel then camped outside the promised land, and Moses called them to obey God's commands so that they could show all the other nations what God is like. The book of Joshua picks up right after Moses has died and Israel's ready to enter the land. So the story of Joshua is designed with four main movements. Joshua first leads Israel into the promised land, and then once they're there, they meet all this hostility from the Canaanites, and so they engage them in battle. Then after their victories, Joshua divides up the promised land as the inheritance for the 12 tribes, and then the book concludes with these final speeches that Joshua gives to the people. So let's dive in and we'll see how all of it flows together. The first section begins with Moses' death, and Joshua is appointed as Israel's new leader. And the author intentionally presents Joshua as a new Moses. So like Moses, Joshua calls the people to obey the Torah, which means the covenant commands that they were given at Mount Sinai. And then Joshua sends spies into the land, just as Moses did back in Numbers chapters 13 and 14, except it goes way better this time. In fact, even some Canaanites turn and follow the God of Israel. Joshua then leads all Israel across the Jordan River and into the land. Just like the sea parted for Moses in the Exodus, so here the river Jordan parts and the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant across, leading all Israel with them.
So, one thing that that video didn't quite explain is that we skipped over a couple of books in the Pentateuch, which, if you will recall, the Pentateuch is the law books, right? So we actually just skipped over to the very last one. I believe it's called Joshua. That's the book of Joshua, right? So this is the rest of the Pentateuch, and with it there are more laws. So after 40 years of wandering in the desert, Moses and the Israelites have finally arrived to the promised land. And this is actually the land that Abraham and his descendants were originally in, right? This is going all the way back to Jacob and his sons, right? This is where, including Joseph, this is where they lived until Joseph, you know, was sold into slavery and in Egypt, and we all know how that plays out, right? Um, so they're finally back after 40 years of wandering in the desert. That's important for you to write down. They have finally arrived, and they are they're overlooking the land. At the time, this land is called Canaan. Um, and Moses gives this great big speech, just sort of, we finally arrived, right? And then he dies. Um, and that's kind of the setup for the book of Joshua right there. Here, you'll see is a map of um, the region we're talking about, right? Um, and this blue region um, is the kingdom of Israel, and the yellowish, it's the kingdom of Judah. Um, this is sort of later down in Israel's history. The kingdom is split in two, north and south. But this whole, both the blue and yellow region together is Israel. And that's modern day Israel as well, right? You see the Mediterranean Sea next to it. If you look closely in the top right of the map, just to give you some context, there's the city Damascus. Um, if anyone is familiar with where Damascus is, that is the capital of Syria, modern day Syria today, right? Um, and next to Israel is modern day Jordan, the country Jordan, and north of Israel is the modern day country of Lebanon. Um, so this is the region of the world we're working with. All right, a little bit about Joshua. You want to write all this down. Joshua he's the new leader, um, and he's kind of been following Moses' footsteps for the last however many years, 40 years, and he's sort of been his apprentice of sorts. Um, Joshua is a different kind of leader than Moses. Joshua is a military hero. He's very much a warrior, and that's going to be a theme in the rest of the book of Joshua. There's a lot of battles, which one of them we'll talk about tomorrow. But also, Joshua is very faithful to God, which is important for the leader of the Israelites, right? So, as I kind of mentioned, they have finally, after 40 years, they've arrived to this promised land, the land of their ancestors. But people are already living there, right? And there's going to be some conflict because of that, as you could imagine. And to help us understand this conflict, let's talk a little bit about U.S. history. I don't know if in any of your history classes you've taken in your educational careers up to this point, how much you've talked about manifest destiny. But just a brief little note about this. In American history, manifest destiny, this was sort of a philosophy, and you saw this in politics and their economy and the social life of America um, early since they arrived, right? Um, this was a philosophy of settlement, which meant that Americans felt they were entitled to settle in this new lands, in these new territories. But there were already people living there, right? The Native Americans are already living on this land. Yet these new settlers coming across from Europe feel they are entitled to this land, right? They believe God has given them a sort of destiny and fate to occupy that land. But there's people already there. So how, I'm sure you're aware that doesn't really work out well for the Native Americans, does it? So, in the book of Joshua, there is a similar situation here. The Israelites also had a strong sense of manifest destiny. They believed, you'll definitely want to write these last 2 points down, that God had given them the land of Canaan through Abraham. It's their ancestor, right? This was originally their land. And nothing should prevent them from resettling there. And they really mean it. Nothing. So I'm going to sort of pause there for today. And tomorrow we're going to look at the first major conflict between the Israelites and the people that were already living there. So that pretty much wraps up all I want to cover with you today. However, you are not quite done yet. What I would like for you to do right now is in a private comment for this assignment post entitled March 18th lesson, write in your own words what manifest destiny means. Specifically within the context of the Israelites here, as we just talked about. Just in your own words, write what manifest destiny meant for them. And you can just write that in a private comment, and that will let me know that you actually listened to today's lesson, and it's sort of a way I can take attendance and I can give you participation points for today. So once you have done that, you can move on to the next activity, which I have detailed in the instructions for this post. Okay? So if you have any questions, please email me, and I look forward to hearing from you, and hopefully we'll be together not before long, okay? So take care of yourselves and have a good day. Bye.